The handcuffs snapped shut around General Angela Brooks' wrists so loudly that the sound echoed off the concrete walls of the security office. A junior officer tightened them once more, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed anywhere but her face. "Ma'am, stop resisting," he said, though she was standing perfectly still. "I'm not resisting," Angela replied, her voice steady despite the cold steel biting into her skin. "I'm asking why I'm being detained." Outside, red and blue lights bled through the narrow window. The words United States Army were still stitched across her uniform, crisp and unmistakable. Minutes earlier, she had been waved toward the base gate. Now she was pressed against a metal desk like a criminal. "You were disorderly," Sergeant Hayes said from behind her. "You talk back." Angela closed her eyes for half a second. She had commanded thousands of troops in combat zones. She had briefed senators and presidents. Yet here she was, heart pounding, trying to slow her breathing as if that alone could restore order. Earlier that morning replayed in her mind. The delayed gate opening, the officer questioning her credentials twice, then a third time. Her calm correction, his tightening expression, her refusal to apologize for stating her rank. The room smelled of old coffee and disinfectant. Somewhere down the hall, a radio crackled with routine chatter, as if nothing extraordinary was happening. "Sergeant," she said quietly, "you're making a mistake." Hayes scoffed. "You don't get to tell us how to do our jobs." For a moment, the anger gave way to something else, hurt. Angela thought of her mother's voice telling her to stay composed no matter what. She straightened her back, even with her hands bound, and stared straight ahead. "If you're still with me through this moment, thank you for listening." The door suddenly flew open. Another officer rushed in, face pale, holding a tablet. "Sergeant," he said, breathless, "we need to talk. Right now." Hayes glanced at the screen, and his expression drained of color just as the lock on the holding door clicked open behind Angela. Continuity. Chapter 2. The holding door slammed shut again, harder than before, rattling the thin glass window. The officer with the tablet stepped back as if he had crossed a line just by entering the room. "Out," Sergeant Hayes snapped. "Both of you." Now. The younger officers hesitated, then obeyed. Their boots faded down the hall, leaving Angela alone with Hayes. The air felt heavier, charged with something neither of them wanted to name. "You think flashing your rank changes things?" Hayes said, lowering his voice. "You don't get special treatment." Angela turned slowly, the cuffs clinking. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for lawful treatment." He leaned closer. "You raise your voice at a gate officer." "I corrected him," she said, "after he accused me of using a stolen ID." Hayes paused. For just a second, uncertainty crossed his face. Then it hardened again. That's not how he reported it. Angela swallowed. Fear crept in. Not loud, not dramatic, but sharp and cold. She thought of the briefing she was supposed to lead in less than an hour. She thought of the classified folder still locked in her car. She thought of how fast reputations could fall. They moved her to a holding room barely larger than a closet. No windows. A metal bench bolted to the wall. The door shut with a final, hollow thud. Time slowed. Her breathing echoed in her ears. She forced herself to sit, shoulders squared, chin lifted. Calm had kept her alive before. Calm would keep her alive now. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Then raised voices burst through the hallway. "You detained who?" someone shouted. The door swung open again. A senior base commander stepped inside, eyes wide, anger barely contained. "That woman," he said, pointing directly at Angela, "is the ranking general overseeing tomorrow's joint operations briefing." Hayes followed him in, face flushed. "Sir," she was disorderly. The commander cut him off. "She's been reported missing." Angela's stomach dropped. "Missing?" she repeated. "Yes," he said grimly. "And the Pentagon is already asking why." The holding door slammed shut again, harder than before, rattling the thin glass window. The officer with the tablet stepped back, as if he had crossed a line just by entering the room. "Out," Sergeant Hayes snapped. "Both of you." Now. The younger officers hesitated, then obeyed. Their boots faded down the hall, leaving Angela alone with Hayes. The air felt heavier, charged with something neither of them wanted to name. You think flashing your rank changes things? Hayes said, lowering his voice. You don't get special treatment. Angela turned slowly, the cuffs clinking. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for lawful treatment. He leaned closer. You raise your voice at a gate officer. I corrected him, she said, after he accused me of using a stolen ID. Hayes paused. For just a second, uncertainty crossed his face. Then it hardened again. That's not how he reported it. Angela swallowed. Fear crept in. Not loud, not dramatic, but sharp and cold. She thought of the briefing she was supposed to lead in less than an hour. She thought of the classified folder still locked in her car. She thought of how fast reputations could fall. They moved her to a holding room barely larger than a closet. No windows. A metal bench bolted to the wall. The door shut with a final, hollow thud. Time slowed. Her breathing echoed in her ears. She forced herself to sit, shoulders squared, chin lifted. Calm had kept her alive before. Calm would keep her alive now. Minutes passed. Maybe longer. Then raised voices burst through the hallway. You detained who? Someone shouted. The door swung open again. A senior base commander stepped inside, eyes wide, anger barely contained. That woman, he said, pointing directly at Angela, is the ranking general overseeing tomorrow's joint operations briefing. Hayes followed him in, face flushed. Sir, she was disorderly. The commander cut him off. She's been reported missing. Angela's stomach dropped. Missing, she repeated. Yes, he said grimly. And the Pentagon is already asking why. Angela was pulled from the holding room without explanation, the cuffs still locked as voices clashed around her. Stand down, the senior commander barked. This is spiraling. Hayes protested, his words tumbling over each other. Sir, procedure was followed. She became confrontational at the gate. Angela stopped walking. Asked for his badge number, she said evenly. That was the confrontation. Silence hit the hallway like a wall. Several officers avoided her eyes. One stared at the floor, his knuckles white around his radio. They led her into a conference room. No windows. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. The commander finally nodded for the cuffs to be removed. When they fell away, Angela rubbed her wrist slowly, grounding herself. For the first time since the gate, she was allowed to sit. I need to understand exactly what happened, the commander said, softer now. Angela spoke carefully, choosing each word. The delayed entry. The repeated ID checks. The accusation that her credentials didn't look right. Her calm response. The order to step aside. Then the word that changed everything. Non-compliant, she said. That's what he called me. The commander closed his eyes briefly. Outside the room, the base felt suddenly very far away. Angela's thoughts drifted to her father, a veteran who had warned her this day might come. She pushed the memory aside. This wasn't about fear. This was about facts. A civilian man in a dark suit entered quietly, holding a phone to his chest. He whispered something to the commander, who stiffened. The Pentagon operations desk is on the line, the commander said. They want an explanation. Angela felt the weight shift. Not relief, not yet, but pressure. Heavy and unforgiving. As the call began, another officer rushed in, breathless. Sir, he said, there's video from the gate. Hayes' face went pale. If you're wondering what that video shows, stay with me, because that single detail changes everything. The video froze on the screen mid-motion. Angela's face caught in a frame she didn't recognize. Calm, alert, unmistakably composed. Play it, the commander said. The room held its breath as the footage rolled. The gate officer leaned into Angela's open window. His posture was aggressive, finger-tapping her ID. Audio crackled, then cleared. You people always think rank excuses attitude, the officer said. Angela's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed level. I'm asking you to follow protocol. The officer stepped back, hand drifting toward his radio. She's getting loud, he said to no one. The commander slammed his hand on the table. Pause. He turned slowly toward Hayes. She never raised her voice. Hayes' mouth opened. Nothing came out. The room fell quiet again as the video resumed. The officer ordered Angela out of the vehicle. She complied. He accused her ID of being fake. She corrected him. Then came the word. Non-compliant, the officer said, loud enough for the body camera to catch clearly. Angela watched herself on the screen, standing still, hands at her sides, doing nothing that matched the report written about her. The commander exhaled through his nose. This doesn't support detainment. Angela finally felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief, but clarity. This wasn't confusion. It was escalation. A knock interrupted the moment. The civilian man in the suit stepped forward again, phone pressed tightly to his ear. They've confirmed her identity, he said. And there's more. He lowered the phone, eyes fixed on Hayes. The Pentagon reviewed the gate report, he continued. They noticed one missing detail. Hayes swallowed hard. The officer who initiated this, the man said slowly, has a prior complaint for false detainment. Same wording. Same trigger. Angela's heart thudded. The commander straightened. Then, this isn't an incident, he said. It's a pattern. Alarms began sounding faintly outside as base security locked down the gate. And for the first time since the cuffs closed, Angela realized the situation wasn't ending. It was expanding. Security alarms blared louder now, sharp and unrelenting, as armed personnel flooded the corridor outside the conference room. The sudden escalation sent a jolt through Angela's chest. What's happening? She asked. The commander didn't answer right away. He was staring at his phone, scrolling fast, his face tightening with every second. The Pentagon has ordered a temporary command freeze, he said finally. No one leaves. No one enters. Hayes backed toward the wall. Sir, this is getting out of hand. No, the commander said coldly. It already was. 2 investigators from base legal affairs entered, followed by a civilian woman carrying a slim laptop. She moved quickly, purposefully, plugging it into the screen without asking permission. We've pulled more footage, she said. Not just from today. Angela's stomach clenched. Images flashed across the monitor. Different dates, different vehicles, different faces. But the same gate. The same officer. The same tone. In one clip, a young Latino captain was ordered out of his car. In another, a black civilian contractor was detained for refusing instructions. Each report used nearly identical language. Angela watched in silence, her hands curling slowly into fists. Hayes shook his head. That's not. Those were separate calls. The investigator turned to him. All cleared internally. All complaints dismissed. The room grew unbearably still. The commander looked at Angela, something like shame crossing his face. General, I owe you an apology. She met his eyes. This isn't about me. Before he could respond, a radio on the table crackled loudly. Command, this is Gate 3, a voice said. We have media outside the perimeter. Someone leaked the detainment. Angela's pulse spiked. The civilian investigator closed her laptop. It's public now. The commander straightened. Then this just became a federal matter. Hayes' knees buckled slightly as 2 military police stepped behind him. And as they placed their hands on his shoulders, Angela realized the injustice that trapped her was now closing in on everyone involved. The sound of Hayes being escorted out echoed down the hallway, his protests fading behind closing doors. Angela remained seated, spine straight, hands folded in her lap, as if composure itself were an act of resistance. Outside, reporters shouted questions through the perimeter fence. Camera flashes strobed against the walls, sharp bursts of white light bleeding through narrow windows. The base no longer felt secure. It felt exposed. A Pentagon liaison entered the room, his expression tight. General Brooks, he said, nodding respectfully, we need your statement on record. Angela stood. Her legs felt unsteady for the first time, but she didn't show it. She spoke clearly, recounting every moment without embellishment. The repeated ID checks, the accusation, the word non-compliant. She described the cuffs tightening, the holding room, the silence. No anger, just facts. When she finished, the liaison closed his notebook slowly. There's something else you should know. The room leaned in. The gate officer's report didn't just omit the video behavior, he said. It altered time stamps. Angela's eyes narrowed. Altered how? He extended the interaction by 12 minutes. the liaison replied. Enough to justify detainment under base security rules. The commander swore under his breath. That's falsifying federal records, the investigator said. Angela felt a cold clarity settle over her. This wasn't a misunderstanding fueled by ego. It was deliberate. A junior officer hesitated at the door, then stepped in. Sir, the officer who initiated the stop. He's requesting legal counsel. The liaison nodded once. That's his right. Angela looked toward the door, imagining the man who had looked at her, and decided her calm voice was defiance. If you're still listening, hold on to this moment, because the smallest detail, buried in a timestamp, is about to unravel everything. The liaison's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked up sharply. The Secretary of Defense is aware, he said, and they want immediate accountability. The room went silent when the Secretary of Defense was mentioned, as if the name itself pulled all the air out at once. Moments later, a secure video line connected. The screen flickered, then steadied on a long conference table in Washington. Several high-ranking officials were already seated, faces stern, folders open. General Brooks, a voice said from the screen, calm but heavy. Are you safe? Angela answered without hesitation. Yes, sir. Good, the voice replied. Because this situation is no longer limited to base security. The liaison turned the screen toward the footage again, this time highlighting the altered timestamp. Numbers glowed red where they didn't align. 12 minutes added. 12 minutes that turned a conversation into a detainment. That single change, the official said, triggered a cascade of false justifications. Angela felt a strange mix of vindication and exhaustion. Her name had already been dragged into reports, headlines forming outside the gates. The damage wasn't theoretical. The gate officer was brought into the room under escort, his confidence gone. He wouldn't meet Angela's eyes. You understand, the voice on the screen said, that falsifying records involving a flag officer is a federal offense. The officer nodded stiffly. I felt threatened. Angela finally spoke. By what? He swallowed. By your tone. The words landed hard. No shouting. No insults. Just that. The officials exchanged looks. The commander leaned forward. Sir, with respect, this officer's actions have compromised operations and public trust. The reply came immediately. Agreed. Orders followed quickly. Suspension. Formal charges. An external review of every detainment tied to that gate. As the call ended, the weight in the room shifted again, but this time it fell elsewhere. A staffer rushed in, phone in hand. General, he said, eyes wide. The story just broke nationally. Angela closed her eyes briefly. Outside the fence, the crowd grew louder. Inside, her career hung in the balance. Not because of guilt, but because injustice has a way of leaving scars even when exposed. The crowd outside the base gates surged as Angela stepped into the open air, flanked by security. Shouts collided, some angry, some supportive, all loud enough to drown out thought. Cameras tracked her every move. Headlines were already forming, careless and sharp. Inside the command building, careers were unraveling just as quickly. The gate officer was removed in silence, his badge taken, his access cut. Hayes' office was sealed pending investigation. Base leadership was ordered to stand down while federal investigators arrived to take over. Angela watched none of it from inside. She stood still, hands clasped, breathing through the weight pressing on her chest. A Pentagon official approached her quietly. General Brooks, the secretary has authorized a full statement correcting the record. Effective immediately. She nodded. Good. The statement went out within minutes. Body camera footage, altered timestamps, prior complaints. The narrative collapsed as fast as it had been built. Phones buzzed nonstop. Apologies arrived, some sincere, some late. The joint operations briefing she had missed was rescheduled, her authority formally reaffirmed. But reinstatement didn't erase the memory of steel cuffs or the echo of a door locking behind her. Later, alone in a quiet office, Angela finally sat down. Her hands trembled now that no one was watching. She thought of the moment she'd been told she was non-compliant, How easily the word had almost cost her everything. A knock came softly. The commander stood in the doorway. "They're calling it wrongful detainment," he said. "In retaliation." Angela looked up. "Call it what it is." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." That night, as the base lights dimmed and the noise faded, Angela removed her uniform jacket and folded it carefully. She wasn't broken, but she was changed. And somewhere, records were being rewritten. Not to hide the truth this time, but to correct it. If this story held you to the end, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who needs to hear it.